Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's session on getting started with SAP and UiPath automation. And if you want to go to the next slide, Amit. So today I'm Diana Gray. I'm the community marketing manager for UiPath, and I'll let the rest of the team introduce themselves.
I'll go next. Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon. So my name is Rahul Goyal. I work for Lucien as Senior Director for the ERP system, and I'm involved in UiPath for the last couple of years as MVP second year. Looking forward to the session. Thanks.
I'll go next. Thank you, Diana. Thanks, Al. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Amit Tiwari, and I'm Vice President Technology at Silicon Partner. We do a lot of work around the UiPath and SAP, and really happy to kind of share what we do, how everybody else can get value out of it. And I've been UiPath MVP from last 3 years, very amazing product, and really proud to be part of this great team. Pankaj?
Thanks, Amit. Hey, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Pankaj Vanka. I'm one of the co-founders at the Silicon Partners. Personally, have over 22 plus years of SAP experience, and we are UiPath with the last 2-3 years, and joined the MVP program this year, and work very closely with Amit on the RPA initiative. So happy to be part of this call and share what SAP and UiPath brings to the table. So thank you.
Thanks. So as you can see, we have 3 people who are MVPs from the Americas. And these sessions, these developer sessions, are really managed by our MVPs, and they come from Canada, Latin America, and the USA. We encourage you to network with them and share your LinkedIn URL in the chat box, because we do want to get to know you. We really set up these calls so that you guys have a forum for asking questions, for feeling, engaged with these great speakers. And we want to share topics that interest you. So if you have other topics you'd like to listen to or hear about, even a follow-up to today's call, please put it in the chat, and we'll listen to that. And if you would just remember that this call is being recorded, and also in the chat, I will add the URL for tomorrow, where you can find that recording. So with that, the only other thing I wanted to let you know is that we will have another session on August 3rd. It is getting started with SAP and UiPath automation. So I will put that URL in the chat as well, so that you can register for that. I think it'll be a great session. So with that, I will turn it over to you guys.
Thanks, Diana. Thank you so much. So, Diana, you spoke, right? We are doing 2 sessions. So first is more focused on kind of introducing UiPath and SAP together. And if you look at the agenda, we'll start with the quick introduction around SAP, why SAP is important for the enterprises, current enterprises, right? And why it is important for their regular business continuity, their processes, and everything else. Secondly, we'll introduce around the UiPath, like how UiPath is working towards the whole process automation, and how it is helping as a platform in enterprises to kind of get on the digital transformation journey, right? And then we talk about more around, like there was a new buzz this year around the SAP and UiPath integration, and the relationship, that what value that can bring, and how everybody else can take advantage of it, right? So we'll talk about that. And then we'll cover some of the important aspect of UiPath components, and show you some basics around like how it works and all. And then we'll talk about key business scenarios around SAP, which can be automated, and probably we can show you some value around it, right? So we'll cover some of the basics in this session, but the idea would be in the next session, we'll deep dive more around how do you build some of the use cases, show you some of the demo around for invoice posting, or probably some of the critical SAP processes, right? To show you the real-time experience, and how do you build those things, right? So we'll cover that. But for today's session, this is our agenda look like. And as Diana said, right, we want to make it more collaborative. So feel free to type in any questions you have, unmute yourself and ask questions. We'll be happy to answer during this session and kind of support you guys, help you guys learn more and learn the right way. So that will be the perspective. And I'll let Pankaj probably start with introducing the SAP section.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. I think not sure how many of you already have experience with SAP, but just to give you a brief background of what SAP is, a brief quickly touch upon quick history of how it evolved in today's marketplace. So SAP has been around. It's an ERP, enterprise resource planning software, integrated package software, which was started way back in the 70s, right? So it started with basically a mainframe system, which was R1. And then slowly and gradually, they have evolved from a version perspective. Initially, because why these guys came up with the idea of SAP was, I mean, enterprises without an integrated system would work in silos, right? All the different departments, be it finance, sales, procurement, production, right? If you don't have an integrated system, everybody will be working in silos and asking each other data and things like that. So SAP came up with an integrated platform to integrate all these key core business processes of an enterprise. So they launched there, and then they started with the mainframe. Then came the R3, which was a true client-server architecture system, right? I mean, more and more integration, real-time reporting, analysis, and things like that. But if you see the journey with the cloud evolution and things like that, so the current product for SAP is the S/4HANA, which is on cloud. So what S/4HANA did was, I mean, eliminated all the RDBMS gotchas and then came up with an in-memory database. So that is the current product that SAP has. I mean, the underlying modules and the business processes, most of them remain the same, right? Finance, production, materials management, sales, HR. So, but the current is, the product is called S/4HANA, which is very simplified data model, very new and user-friendly UI, and then definitely from a real-time analytics and a reporting standpoint, they have made it into a in-memory database. Next slide. So what is HANA, right? So HANA, when it comes to HANA, right, I mean, everybody I'm sure would have some experience with an RDBMS database, right? So what SAP thought was bringing, because most of the Fortune 500, 100 companies use SAP with lots and lots of data sets, right? So what they thought was, I mean, to bring that in an in-memory database so that the processing and the analytics is real-time and very quick. So what they did is created the SAP HANA system, which was in memory, which can manage a large data set with a very user-friendly and intuitive UI, and then very simplified and modern data platform. So that is the reason that HANA was evolved. Next slide, Amin. Again, to give a graphical overview of what SAP HANA entails is, I mean, as we already discussed, in memory, then the database is more columnar than rows, and then also helps with the mass parallel processing, right? So, and they have, what they've done is created that calculation engine in the in-memory database so that, I mean, extracting data and posting data is very quick and real time.
And that is a very good point, Pankaj, because I mean, SAP being kind of the core ERP system, which majority of the enterprises uses, right? And they were kind of being on the on-prem system, and everybody is trying to move to cloud. And that's where like they evolve with the same process, all the critical business processes are around the SAP, and then move to the HANA. So S/4HANA is the main area where like everybody who is into SAP will be migrating, and then there will be a lot of opportunity for the automation, right? Because those critical business processes will be still intact around SAP ecosystem, and which will be touching upon either you are integrating with the Salesforce and S/4HANA, or you're integrating your ServiceNow or Worksoft and everything else, right? So Workday and SuccessFactors and all of that, right? So that's the main reason like why it is important to understand like even the SAP ecosystem.
And just one more point to add here is, I mean, S/4HANA is the core. There are so many ancillary systems that an enterprise use. So, and automation brings a lot of value when it comes to integrating these systems with SAP, right? And we'll go over that. Amit and Rahul will go over that in the next few slides of how we can integrate processes and systems with your core ERP system.
Yeah, I think that's a key point, Pankaj. You said it's a process-driven automation. Even though technically, yes, we connect to a system, but the mechanics of integration of UiPath with SAP, the same thing applies to any other enterprise system. So you can connect to Salesforce and UiPath. You can connect to any type of a browser-centric system or a traditional GUI-based system. UiPath support that automation. But it's more when you look at the automation, the theme is more to look at a process as to what process we are looking to automate, and then what technology those processes are running on. UiPath has the capability to connect to any technology and any process that's running on those technologies.
Got it. I mean, this slides, I mean, will not go into the technical details, but just shows the evolution of the different versions of SAP over the years. Like, I mean, it started with the SAP Business Suite R1, R2, R3, right? Which was on-prem, could sit. So I'll just stop here. There's a question here. So you want to take the question in the end, or?
We can answer that question.
We can take the question.
We just covered that more. I think the UiPath, I can take that maybe, and you can chime in there. So the current partnership is with SAP. It's not centric only to the S4 product of SAP. So like I said earlier, so even though you're using the SAP ECC, which is the traditional on-prem SAP solution, UiPath relationship and the solution cover automation on that side of the solution also. And it does cover, of course, the more on the S4 side, because that's where the trend is. That's where every customer is heading. But technically, UiPath has a capability to connect to any SAP solution.
Right. And just to add to that is, I mean, we have done so many projects which are on ECC currently. I mean, customers on ECC. So we have automated their processes. So, I mean, to answer your question, I think this partnership entails the entire SAP umbrella. It's not just S/4HANA.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And that is the idea why we wanted to showcase the different version of SAP. I mean, a lot of people might not be on S/4HANA yet. They might be on ECC, but the biggest benefit with the UiPath automation is, let's say if you automate on the ECC system and you migrate to S/4HANA, your automation doesn't change much. Still, your automation will be quite a lot valid, and probably with some minor changes, they can work on your S/4HANA as well. So that's the main reason we are trying to highlight the different version of SAP, but UiPath automation can work on both the versions at the same time.
Got it. And then just one more point to add here from an ECC and S4 standpoint is definitely S4, the new GUI or the UI is Fiori based, which is web-based, mobile-based, but the underlying GUI remains the same, right? That is based on the same architecture and technology. So, I mean, ECC and S4 works perfectly fine with UiPath automations.
Thank you all. That's a nice answer.
Yeah, I just have, I've been an RPA owner, not at my current job right now, but over the last, since like 2014. And every time we've had a major system upgrade, it's resulted in us migrating the code, sometimes completely reworking the code. So how are you guys implementing? How is it implemented? Is it all API backend stuff, and that way they're not having to screen scrape and do all that? Or what is the difference between now and then that you're not having to go through and really reformat everything?
Sure, and I can answer that. And you're right, Aaron. So one way is like you are doing through the API, but that is not the suggestive way of doing the automation. I know like you started way well ahead in 2014 or something, and that's where like the platform, even on the automation side, we're evolving, right? So UiPath started around that time frame, but now the version which UiPath have, it completely different. It does offer you a lot of capability, whereas object-based kind of prioritizing things. And whereas if you change just one object, it can impact, I mean, it can change in your like 15 to 20 processes wherever you are using it, right? So one small change can help you deploy all the automations around that particular screen or process, right? So that kind of benefit it has taken. But the way we balance is we try to do wherever it is a very bulk upload or bulk data set, we try to go the API route. But in general, UI is the right way and the right guidance of doing it, because with the UI, you have all the validations and all the fields customized as per your ecosystem already defined, and you don't have to do the extra work and work with the business to identify that, okay, what are the business rules? What are the exceptions we need to handle, right? So that's the why we kind of try to process through UI majorly.
Okay, so what I'm understanding is essentially the partnership that SAP and UiPath have essentially so SAP would essentially build their functionality or build the new form. So say if they take a button and move it across the screen, it's going to have the same name, same properties. So UiPath is going to be able to find it, right? Is that essentially what I'm understanding?
And that is not SAP building it. So it's more of like how the best practice you follow when you are building it. And yes, I mean, UiPath has created certain objects already around SAP. If we use those, I mean, we'll not be challenged with the upgrades and all of that. But that is more of the development team who is doing the development and creating those object libraries and probably reusing those components in all the automations, right? So that's where like you reduce your risk of any upgrade and then probably failing your 50 or 100 automations. So SAP is supporting that with kind of authorizing and approving some of the objects which are being built, but I think it's more responsibility comes on the development side.
Okay, thank you.
And there could still be some level of regression testing expected, Aaron. I think like in our case, we are also customer both SAP and UiPath, and we go through very rigorous as on-premise. We have periodic upgrades coming in our system, and then we have a lot of automation on the UiPath that is running on the SAP side. Even though yes, we most part of it we expect it to work as is, because we are not touching the core components. We're not touching. We are more relying on the reusability aspect of the SAP. But there are still some cases where you may have to still go back and readjust if a screen layout has changed on the SAP side. If there are some new fields that are added which are not part of your original automation, so there may be some level of rework is expected based on the type of a change that is introduced in the upgrade. So it depends on the process, and it also depends on what level of automation is written and how the automation is written. And accordingly, you may need to go and adjust the way the bot was built originally. Okay, thank you.
Right. And there was one more question around the SAP version 750 to 770. One person, I think they upgraded, but they had seen certain kind of a screen change and probably the selectors were not able to identify correctly. And there were some new pop-ups, and which is, I mean, the right experience. I mean, some the times we have experienced that when we upgraded the client version on SAP, we had to adjust for certain screens, how they interact and probably make it work in 750 and 760 or 770, all three, because certain people might be using 750 and certain people might be using 770 version of the SAP thick line, right? So we are adjusting. But what we also found out is when we kind of moved on the UiPath defined objects for some of the examples like login and logout and some of the transaction posting, they are more adequate to work with all the thick lines. So maybe reuse those at times, but at certain times there might be certain difference where like the pop-ups might be different and probably the screen might be different, whereas selectors need to be redefined. So those are the learnings from SAP, but that is a very good question.
And then the follow-up is definitely the partnership should document these changes more often. So I think the partnership is still evolving, right? And I think in future, there will be more and more documentation of when the upgrade happens, when the new release is coming, what are the changes that need to, so that will evolve over time. And the partnership was just announced recently. So I think this changes and documentation will evolve over time.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Pankaj. I think because the UiPath also will kind of evolve those objects which they have already created around SAP, because they would know in advance from SAP that, okay, this change is coming, and they will test those things in advance and probably release a new version for you. So definitely positive things coming here.
And the other question is, the pain point is that whenever they upgrade SAP, the bots break, right? So people are hoping that this partnership will, they like to see what benefits are with this partnership, right? So
Sure, and we can talk about it, the partnership and some of the specific things which people are interested in. So that's the objective, and we can talk about. We note those questions probably, and we'll talk about more around it. Okay, so I know like a lot of people would be already knowing what automation look like, but I think there might be people who are first timer and trying to understand like what this UiPath and what this kind of automation look like, right? So just we brought in this quick slide from the technical perspective to give you understanding. And if you look at the first swim lane, right? I mean, this is a way how the manual process used to work for us. Whereas, let's say, for example, you want to create a role and the user into SAP and probably give him permission to access process all the AP invoices and everything else, right? So the earlier manual process used to be, whereas somebody will create a ticket in ServiceNow or Jira or whatever you use, Azure DevOps and everything else, right? So they will create a ticket, then somebody will manually read the ticket, understand like, okay, where exactly it need to be created, what all system, it's going to be SAP or AD or probably the Salesforce or whatever it is, right? So they will identify those systems. Then they will go and navigate saying that, okay, does this role exist or not? If not, they might have to create a new role for it, assign the right permission set to it, and then probably add the user to that role. And that way, that user will get permission on the requested modules and requested function for the SAP or Salesforce systems, right? And then probably they will close the loop by sending an update saying, okay, this has been completed, go back and mark the ticket as complete into the ServiceNow ticketing system or whatever ticketing system you are using, right? So that was the kind of manual process. And that is, kind of a very mundane and repetitive process where we understand that, okay, this is very fixed and closed loop item. Whereas if somebody who knows what is need to be done step by step, they can easily process it, right? What we did in before the automation and UiPath was introduced to the industry was people try to do the automation with kind of partial way of things, whereas some people try to build some of the kind of partial script. Some people try to write the Python code. Some people try to build the API around it, which solves your 10%, 20%, 30% needs, and probably on the given gap area, right? So that solves you to fix some small automations around it, right? But it's still not give you the whole end-to-end automation as a perspective. And the third swim lane, if you see how the robotic process automation got introduced, and probably the how the UiPath robot works and interact with the system is exactly same as how the human being will be working on it, right? So just replace the human with the robot in this particular process to kind of take care of that particular job or the process, whereas the robot will look into your ServiceNow ticket or probably wherever your ticketing system is, identify the type of ticket which is need to be resolving, right? And then based on, let's say for the user creation and the role creation, we have that ticket. It will find out and download all the information from ticket, like who need to be getting access and what is the username and everything else. And then probably log into the portal, navigate to the SAP system, try to first check that if that particular role exists where I want to give the permission. If not, then probably it will create a new role and then assign the right permissions, and then probably add that particular user in that role, and then probably send out an email and mark that ticket as a complete, right, end to end. So from the complete manual to partial automation to the full automation. So that's the transition which industry is looking at. And this does not mean that probably I think the robot will be kind of taking over the human work, which was kind of the concern raised by a lot of people earlier. But now I think everybody understands very well that the mundane work, the repetitive work, nobody likes to do, right? I mean, there's a lot of other things where we can focus on and we can work on, and these automation can at least help us supporting some of the background work where we don't want to do those repetitive tasks, right? So that's the help which the robot brings, but it brings with a lot of value, the ability to interact with the GUI, ability to process and work with, jump through different applications and still complete the end-to-end process, right? So that's the big advantage which it brings us value for.
I mean, just to put this in SAP perspective, right? I mean, take an SAP process, a normal manual process of creating a sales order or purchase order or creating an employee or finance document, right? So you had to key in different fields, different streams, tabs, right? And then came this scripted business process where you would use BAPIs or BDCs, right? With some manual intervention. And then came UiPath and the RPA where you could automate all those processes, fully automated processes, right? So just to put that in perspective from an SAP perspective.
Thanks for that. And now, I mean, UiPath, just introducing UiPath as a platform. So UiPath has been the leader into the automation space, and there is a reason why they are leader, because they have the vision and understanding about why automation is needed versus, I mean, dividing the automation into three core categories where like not only doing the automation plus also, I mean, definitely the UiPath as a tool work really well with the AI capability and everything else with the different UI interaction and identify the right selectors within the UI, either it's web or thick client like SAP or Oracle. I mean, we have worked with both the options. So it does identify those and do the automation really well, and kind of evolve from the whole test automation concept, which was back in days we have used either Selenium or kind of Worksoft or Tricentis and all of those, right? So it has evolved from that, but it has taken the whole automation concept to a very different level because they evolved the whole product to interact with the UI and understand the element of the selector, which are very critical aspect of any automation, right? So they have done that. But that was just one part of like the whole core product, whereas how do you do the automation? But there are things around the automation, whereas you are not only looking to do the automation, but you want to also identify some of the processes around like what do I automate? Because generally what we have seen is the enterprises start with the automation. They kind of identify initial 5 or 10 processes. They know that this is where like the biggest bug of ROI is, and they do automation, and probably they feel like, okay, now we are done. I mean, we don't have anything else where we can focus on probably or bring the value to the organization. So what UiPath has done is it has given you a platform and opportunity to explore around the discovery as well, whereas you can use the tools like process mining, task mining, communication mining to identify your use cases, where exactly your bottlenecks are, what are your processes where they are struggling to do the innovation, where they are struggling to kind of being stranded and not able to process further? What are the different scenario within the same process? Whereas on 70% time it goes to the happy path and probably everything is successful, but 30% time if it goes to non-happy path and probably it gets stuck for like months, right? So people are waiting on it, and that impact overall the business around it, right? And so those kind of insight can be brought in by the UiPath discovery platforms like process mining, task mining, and they recently acquired new company last year, which is more around the AI-based email mining, which is they called it communication mining, and very powerful tool. We have started using it. So those help with you the discovery. Second layer is the automation, whereas low-code platform, very easy to understand, very easy to adopt by the business and probably even the technical people. Build your automation. So mainly there are three categories where you see the automation applies. One is your process automation, whereas any process which is mundane, and probably we talked about some of the examples in earlier slide of user creation or probably posting of the invoice or those kind of things, right? So that is your standard process automation where it can help you do the automation. The second is the intelligent automation, whereas you have a document, unstructured document or the PDF document, whereas your invoice, vendor invoice or the customer invoice is coming from thousands of customers or 2,000 of customers or 10,000 of customers. How does the OCR will able to understand like all those templates? How will OCR will be able to extract the information for your ship to party, sold to party, your item number, your material number, your quantity, your total price, all of those information, right? So that is very, very critical to kind of have a ability to understand those kind of documents and extract the right information out of it, and then process it through the regular automation, whereas you can post that invoice into your SAP ecosystem, either Miro or Migo or FP16 transaction, following those things, right? So that is the intelligent automations, which is second part. Third part I initially talk about is like the concept of the automation and the robotic process automation evolved from the test automation. And a lot of tools around test automation became legacy because they did not evolve beyond what they were earlier doing. And UiPath realized that, after they launched successfully automation, that okay, there is a big place to play on the test automation side as well. And that's where UiPath ventured 4 years ago in the test automation space. And now they have become leader even doing the test automation. So imagine your same robot or same reusable objects are being used in your test automation, your process automation, and your intelligent automation. So that kind of big benefit which they bring into the table as a platform. And that's the reason kind of many enterprises choosing UiPath as a kind of primary automation platform in across all these three areas. And that's the benefit, because that help you reduce a lot of cost around your manual, your infrastructure, your licensing, your skill set, everything else, right? Where you have to spend those things on multiple tools. Now just one platform is offering everything to you, right? So that's the big part around automation. And then the last part is the operate, whereas if you do the automation, either it's on the business process automation or the intelligent automation or the test automation, the leadership team want to understand like, okay, where exactly the ROI is, what is the value we have done automation. So they provide the tools like insights and the automation hub, which can help you kind of define and probably get the value out of each automation. Whereas like, what was your baseline? How much effort did you save? How much value you bring in with this automation, right? So very, very powerful, and probably kind of just giving you overview, but we can certainly talk about in more details about individual product line. But as a platform, this is what the UiPath is offering. And I'll just take a quick question here. I see there were, what does UiPath measure up against tools like Cypress or, okay. So Cypress on the test side is very scripted, and probably it is a test automation tool for something, whereas you are testing for your modules and code-driven testing, right? So it is very specific and targeted to the web-based application, right? The Cypress. Whereas the UiPath test automation is more across the platform. So let's, for example, SAP and Oracle are the big giant on the enterprise application wide, right? So UiPath works really well with that. UiPath can work with integrating your process starting from your Salesforce, for example, your order to cash process, right? So you start from Salesforce, you go do the testing around Salesforce, then you do the testing for the same process in SAP, then you do the testing on the same process on your licensing application or whatever you have in your enterprise, right? So that's the big difference. And it is a bigger platform compared to the Cypress. Cypress is more focused on some of the specific web-based test automation.
So another question is, can we talk more specifically about integration with SAP?
Sure, and that is the next slide. Yeah. So what does that integration means to UiPath and SAP, right? So the biggest benefit is UiPath understand very well that SAP is the enterprise ERP being used. I believe, I think more than 60+% of enterprises being used by SAP in manufacturing and high tech and life science and many other domains, right? UiPath realized that benefit, and they understand very well that the SAP itself provide you a lot of value in the automation, which is internal, but the processes which are business critical and probably important for the business continuity, right? They are around SAP. And around SAP means you are not only doing the automation around SAP, but what happens that 60% of time you are bringing a lot of data from outside, talking to your Salesforce, talking to your third-party tool set, talking to your kind of unstructured document, all of that, right? And bringing that data to the SAP. So SAP becomes your kind of data host for majority of the times, but processes which are around many applications, whereas 60% outside of SAP and 40% in the SAP, right? So that understanding UiPath realized really well. And that's the reason they partnered with SAP that, okay, how closely we can work. Although SAP had its own process automation tool, which is still beneficial in certain kind of scenarios, and that is still need to be defined by the SAP, which will come to know in coming time frame. But the biggest benefit which we are seeing is this integration will help us being UiPath license, being part of the SAP SQ itself. So if you and that is coming, I mean that will be announced pretty soon. So if you are having the SAP credits or probably SAP SQ license for your organization, there is going to be 90% possibility that you can be able to use some of those credits in leveraging the UiPath as a tool, right? So that is still being defined, but I mean just sharing that thought process, that's where the thought is going and taking. On the second hand, trying to align the UiPath product more around SAP, and probably as you have heard that a lot of people kind of already shared that, okay, with the upgrades and all of that, there's always a lot of challenge. And what UiPath is trying to do is how they can work closely with SAP when it becomes the integrated partner, and that whenever SAP is trying to release something, UiPath will have the first hand to review it and test their core objects around it and make sure that nothing fails for the enterprises when the automation happens, right? So those two are the core factors which we see that this relationship will bring the value on. But Rahul, Pankaj, feel free to add on something if you have any other additional thought around it.
No, I think you covered that, and I think there's still more to come from the relationship standpoint. I think there's another question that just came up around the licensing and how does that it's going to evolve the relationship between SAP and UiPath. I think that I feel is there's still that the level of detail and the clarity that's still yet to come in the market as to how this sort of relationship going to evolve over time in terms of licensing and in terms of how best to use the integration components between the two products. I think at this point, what we've seen in the market is that with the new updates that coming up on the UiPath side, that getting more and more stronger in terms of making it more robust from a development standpoint, making it seamless in terms of the upgrades and supporting all type of SAP products. I think that's what we are seeing. The growth has started, but in terms of licensing and the relationship part, I think that's something yet to evolve and yet to be introduced. And that maybe Diana, you can take it as an offline more on the UiPath perspective as to what you see or what direction I think UiPath is giving to the customer. I think that could be an offline conversation. I think we can share later with the audience.
Right. And then just to add to that, with SAP's goal of keeping the core clean, right? I mean, and this will answer the upgrade question that, hey, if the core is clean and whenever there is an upgrade, it doesn't fail. So keeping the core clean and doing all your extensions, developments, integration now. So UiPath will fill that gap and bridge that gap. Using those UiPath platform, you can fill those gap and keep your core SAP clean and do all your extensions and integration outside of the core SAP system using the UiPath platform.
Right. And UiPath is already endorsed app with the SAP, and probably endorsed app means, I mean, they are going the direction, whereas, as I was saying, that probably UiPath license, you don't have to, if you are buying license from SAP, maybe you will be able to buy directly from SAP itself. You don't have to separately go to the UiPath and buy those licenses. So that what it means from the licensing perspective. But there is more, I think, clarity going to be coming in coming months from UiPath. Okay, so I'll let Rahul jump on some of the quick overview of the UiPath platform.
So, if I can stop, if we can stop sharing.
Okay, let me stop share.
Yeah, I'm going to start before I share my screen. I know we touched most of the discussion around the relationship and then what we've seen in the past, and then how the relationship is evolving. And sounds like from the Q&A and some of the discussion that has happened that most of you already have some level of understanding of how SAP automation can be started or can be built using UiPath. So I don't think we need to go to that level of detail, but I'm still going to just quickly walk through how to get started, like for those who haven't been into that stage yet as to how to get SAP automation started. So we can talk in the next few minutes how to get started building a simple automation on the SAP side, and then we can take further deep dive in the follow-up session on Thursday if there are any more detailed level of automation that's required. So we can. So I think most of you, I'm assuming, are already familiar with the UiPath components, that any development that you're going to start within the UiPath Studio, right? That's where all the heavy build is going to be. Any type of an automation you need to do, whether it's an SAP related automation, any other browser centric. The UiPath Studio is a core engine. That's where all the development happens. So specifically talking on the SAP side, one of the things which we need to keep in mind is the UiPath provides standard packages, right? And that's where the relationship between SAP and UiPath is evolving over time. That there are constant updates coming in terms of standard packages. So what package does is it provides standard activities, standard capabilities to use or to integrate or to use any of the standard features to build any type of an automation. So if you go to your managed package, you can see there are many UiPath centric packages out there. There are many third-party packages that are out there, and then based on the type of a process and the automation you're looking, you would need to adopt that package for your build, right? So if I look into an SAP automation, you would see that there are standard automation that are introduced that's related to the backend activities. If you want to use more modern automation technique, and as compared to traditional GUI-based automation, UiPath provide now standard activities where you can directly call SAP BAPIs to do more of a backend related automation. If you're thinking of an unattended automation running on the SAP side to do some backend data reconciliation, downloading SAP data into Excel and do some Excel to SAP reconciliation all in the backend, I highly suggest using SAP BAPIs for that purposes. But if you are more attended automation, looking for an end user to create some sales order or to update some SAP transactions based on some validations written on the screen, on that case, the BAPIs may not be the right thing, but you would follow a regular process to call SAP transaction and then navigate the scheme by scheme process. So I think based on the process, based on what you're looking to automate, you would accordingly implement and adopt the required package to build that automation. So just wanted to call it out. On my studio, I already have adopted some of these packages. And once I adopted the package, if I search for the SAP, you would see that there are standard activities out there. SAP provides, if you're familiar with SAP solution called SuccessFactors, which is the global leader now in the HRIS space. So SAP UiPath provides standard connector to connect to SuccessFactors. UiPath provides standard connector to connect to SAP, like if you need to log into SAP, if you want to call any transaction in SAP, and keep in mind that these activities work both on S4 and ECC side, even though ECC or S4 doesn't have a transaction concept, it's all theory based, like what Pankaj said earlier, but behind the scene, it's still calling a transaction in the backend. So the same activity support both the S4 processing as well as the ECC processing, right? So with adopting those packages, it enables your studio to start building the standard automation. So if you say, so SuccessFactors and UiPath automation, between these two packages, you can use to build any type of an automation on the SAP side. So just to show you real quick, if I need to quickly build a bot to log into SAP, there are two options you can use. One is SAP login and one is SAP logon. It depends how your SAP landscape is set up. If you are familiar with the SAP login options, you can enable single sign-on capabilities where user doesn't need to enter username, password. All you're doing is authenticating using your SAML 2.0 or Active Directory credentials in the backend. UiPath provide both type of capabilities. You can still use to type in the username, password to log into SAP, or you can directly use the single sign-on capability to log into SAP. So based on that, if I use SAP logon, that basically assume that you are single sign-on. I just need to give the connection name here, and then it directly connects me to my SAP system. If that's my connection name on the GUI. If you're familiar with the SAP install on the local machine, you would have a SAP logon pad on your end user machine and the connections accordingly created. So all you have to do is drag that SAP logon activity, type in the connection name, and then if I run that machine, it's going to basically then launch and log in for me on my SAP system, right? So that's one way of doing and logging into SAP. But if you don't have an SAP single sign-on enabled on your platform, you can still do the traditional SAP login activity where you type in the client name, you type in your username, password, and then the language, and then you can still use that way to connect to SAP, right? So it has both the capabilities. And similarly, like we were talking earlier on the selectors, right? I highly recommend using some of these activities there. If you want to navigate any of the screens or any menu bar, sub-menu items on the screen, is highly recommend to use the standard activity. And that the earlier comment was when we do an upgrade, if there's a screen change, if there's a layout change, if there's a new menu item that is introduced or a sub menu item introduced, using this standard activity will take care of that, because this is real-time reading any new changes that is introduced on your SAP GUI side. So as much you can use the standard activities which are out there rather than doing a traditional recording of the SAP screen, that makes it much more stable from your automation standpoint. And then without going into any further detail, like you can some of these, if you want to set a date, there's a standard activity to use the calendar to set date on the screen. If you want to scrape the data, there are many use cases which we'll talk in the next slide. If there's a requirement for you to download the SAP data into some Excel, and then on a typical business use case is to do some reconciliation on a monthly basis, where you download some GL line item report into Excel and then do a monthly reconciliation. There's a standard activity to scrape the table content into Excel, and then it brings you all the columns and the rows into Excel, and then you can do all the processing as needed on the Excel side. So that works pretty well to automate your download SAP tables into Excel. And then like call transaction is pretty handy transaction. If you need to log in, like if I'm logging into SAP already, if I want to I'm not going to walk in the Zoom screen sharing here, but anyway, I think that the point is that if you have to type in a transaction code here, let's say I want to display a sales order, right? There are many ways you can automate it. That you can type into the transaction code here, and then that's one way of doing it. But as compared to using a type into transaction code, the standard activity now there is the call transaction, and then you just type in the transaction code there, and then it launched directly those transactions for you. And that's another way to avoid any screen change or a layout change from an upgrade standpoint, where you are relying on UiPath activity to call a transaction for you, regardless of your selector or any other local GUI settings. An activity is always going to run the transaction for you. So those are some of the things that as much you rely on the standard activities to integrate with SAP, whether you're calling a traditional GUI based screen or you're calling a standard BAPI activities. If you want to invoke any backend RFCs, it's highly recommended to use these activities where you just type in your RFC or a BAPI code. As long as that BAPI is enabled to run, and then it provides you direct access to those BAPIs from the student standpoint. Any comment, thought, questions from anybody on this one?
I think, Rahul, I think that's a good demo to show. There was one question around like, is there example for the Fury? So I believe there is no specific activity created for the Fury, because Fury goes more on the UI5, which is again kind of a web-based selection on HTML and everything else in the background. Yep. So there is no specific activity needed for the Fury tile, but it can be just your kind of web-based automation to simplify the answer.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, the thing, it's any browser, any UI5, any HTML based interface that's supported. So if it's Fury interface for you, that's also can be automated through the same standard activities in the UiPath.
Yeah. And in general, UiPath is investing a lot of effort, R&Ds, right, with SAP activities to bring more and more activities standard in the UiPath platform, right?
Yep. Either it's for sales success factor or even SAP overall, right? So that covers our quick kind of overview for the platform today. I know like we are only 5 minutes away, but feel free to type in your questions if you have anything specific you want to ask. You guys can always reach to us independently over LinkedIn or probably any other ways. We'll be happy to answer you. As a last segment of this session, we wanted to cover like what it looks for the automation opportunities and some of the scenarios around overall SAP, right? So what we have done is kind of show you the two swim lane around SAP ecosystem. So if you look at the blue swim lane, which is start for SAP, so either you are on the SAP S/4HANA or you are on the SAP ECC system, even you are leveraging the SAP BTP application, business transformation platform, right? Your SAP Ariba is one of the core area, whereas it is still not well integrated with the SAP ecosystem. And a lot of times data transfer between the SAP even on the HANA side or ECC side versus the SAP Ariba has to be done manually, right? So that area, SAP basis activities, a lot of work which the basis team does in the daily monitoring of the servers, your jobs running, your SAP services running well, your system refreshes and all of that, right? So those are the core area. SAP Concur, so Concur is the other product for expense and travel management for SAP. There's a lot of things and the data which is not well integrated with the SAP still, right? So there's a lot of opportunity around that. And then the SAP SuccessFactors, which is a HXM module from SAP for whole HXM solution. And even there's a lot of opportunity around automation within that space. And what is we are trying to highlight is the whole SAP ecosystem. I mean, we have been working and looked at it very well. And there's a lot of opportunity around automation within those things. And everything can be achieved by the UiPath platform. So on the top swim lane, you can see that we have highlighted the UiPath platform for the automation, whereas some of the initial ones are the discovery ones, but I think the document understanding and probably the test manager and the test suite for the testing perspective, and similarly the document understanding and the AI centers and the data services are more around your intelligent process automation, that how you integrate between two different systems and kind of transfer the data from unstructured to a structured way, right? So with leveraging the whole UiPath as a platform, you can solve a lot of gaps between the SAP ecosystem, which is around all these products line within the SAP ecosystem, right? So that's the kind of perspective we want to highlight here, even testing versus the automation. And on the next slide, I mean, these are more core focus to the business line. If you understand well on the record to report or order to cash or probably your supply chain or procure to pay, right? I mean, these are the certain, low hanging fruits on the automation, whereas can be leveraged if I talk about your record to report side of the story, whereas your GRIR reconciliation, which is very critical for any organization, that you have the good receipt and invoice receipt process very well established. And there's a lot of big gap around it which can be automated. Your invoice posting, your profit and loss reconciliation for if you have multiple subsidiary or multiple company code within your SAP ecosystem, then that process becomes very hefty for you, because now you are doing it for multiple system and then probably consolidating everything, right? So those kind of processes, your 3-way match, your 2-way match around the record to report. Similarly, if you go on the order to cash side, sales order entry, even the customer master data or the master data creation can be automated. Your aging invoices, the DSOs, I mean, all those can be automated, whereas robot can look at those aging invoices and send the email to vendor or customer saying, look, these are the aging invoices and you have to make payment around it, right? So those are the core components. On the supply chain side of it, there is a proof of delivery or probably your stock transfer or your kind of inventory record update, and those kind of things can be automated. And one of the important one which we liked and probably a lot of customer used was the update free ETA on SAP deliveries. So you are packaging something through your SAP ecosystem, but your packaging is depending on some of the vendor product which is going to be delivered to you by FedEx or UPS or some other carrier around the world, right? And if their ETA change, your ETA has to change, and somebody has to manually go and track it. So, I mean, this is one process which a lot of customers liked, whereas the robot can go and monitor those deliverables from different career products by checking their ETA and come back and update the ETA within the SAP system for your customer deliverables, right? So that's the one area. Similarly, on the procure to pay side, your vendor performance master, your vendor invoice verification, all of that, right? So those are the core around the bigger processes, but it is not only limited to those, right? I mean, these are just the partial highlight of what you can do, what you can achieve. In the middle part, you can see that a lot of HXM thing versus the IT can also be automated. So a lot of HSM processes where like you're onboarding, your somebody is exiting, so exit process can also be automated, whereas the robot can go and probably work on taking out or assigning the role to the manager or somebody else and dedicate that until that person is kind of well settled. Some of the system monitoring on the bad jobs and everything else which can be automated on the IT side, and robot can work with working on those data points and probably only bring you the right information for you, so that you don't have to look at thousands and thousands of records, but you are only worried about the 5 which are failures, right? So those kind of things, and the test automation is always the core area around the overall IT scape, IT landscape for the automation perspective. So just wanted to give you guys a brief idea around like what are the low-hanging fruits around automation, what can be automated in this session. So I hope this was helpful. Anybody else wants to add in at here? I know like we are mostly on the top of the hour.
Any other
Okay.
last minute questions? Okay, I think that's it. Amit, Pankaj, and Rahul, I just want to thank you. Today's session was really great, and thank everybody for coming today.
These slides will be available?
Yes, I put it in the chat. They'll be
Great.
recorded today, and then you'll find the URL. And I also just want to remind you that we have a session in 2 days, which is getting started with SAP and UiPath automation. So don't forget, that's in the chat as well, to enroll in the next session to hear more. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.